Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creaso. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Well, hey there, Jim. I really appreciate you being on the call today, despite the technical difficulties, the snow, and it seems the forces were trying to keep us apart, but we're together right now. So I'm excited about doing this interview with you. So for people that don't know you, you're Jim Lawler, legend in Cottonwood, Arizona. You've been building homes since a tender age. I think 18 is when you said you first started. So how about, like any good story, let's start at the very beginning. My friend, tell us a little bit about you and your journey into construction in Arizona.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you, Michael, for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, to be interviewed by you. Thank you for that. And yes, I started in the construction field when I turned 18. My father was a plumbing contractor for 30 years in Stone. I worked for him on and off during the summers. And once I graduated from high school, I realized that is not what I wanted to do. So I changed the what I did for a living and went to work in the construction industry, working for a general contractor in the Sedona area, Sedona is about 15 miles to the west of us, to the east of us. And so if you don't know Sedona is a beautiful tourist attraction, a great place where a lot of millionaires live. And so I was fortunate to be able to build very nice homes, starting at the age of 18 with the general contractor I worked with. I became his job site foreman within 6 months of working for him. And then I worked for him for about a year and a half. And then I went to work for the largest construction company in northern Arizona. We had like 75 employees, did a lot of work. It was really a nice job to have. He, the owner of that company, I knew him since I was a young boy. He let me actually drive around a front end loader when I was about 13 years old. And from there, we struck up a relationship. So when I went to work for him, he right away turned me into one of his job site superintendents. And so I worked in that position for him. Within a year of that, he had me building luxury homes in Sedona. And so that was my first job as a project superintendent, building a home in my career. So within another year after that, he drove me to a job site, an empty lot, handed me the set of plans and said, build this house there. And so I was able to do that. And it actually was just a fantastic experience for me. And then right before I left his employment, I was a project superintendent for a large townhouse project that he had going on. And so the nice thing working for him is he asked me to do a lot of things that I learned that I needed to do as an owner of my own company. So it was really nice. I did all the change orders, put together all the cost breakdown sheet, the scope of work for the clients. I did all of that work for him. So that way, all he had to do is just add on profit and overhead. Basically, so I did everything else.
During your ascension here, you're still swinging a hammer. So you're learning all the tricks of the trade, working with this builder. And then he takes you behind the scenes so you actually get the feeling of what it is to be the administrator and owner. So you've got both skill sets. Okay.
I did, yes. And actually, once I became a project superintendent, working on the job site was minimal. I still did, but I did a lot of coordination with subcontractors, vendors, and then the crews working on the job. So I would organize them, get them lined out for the day, and then I would then contact subcontractors to get them scheduled, put together my schedule, work on products that needed to be ordered. And so it was really a pretty busy day, but I would start at 6 a.m. and didn't leave the office until 6 p.m. So I basically gave him 12 hours a day. But I actually knew that was for my future. I knew that someday I was going to own my own company. And it's just a matter of time when that was going to happen. And when I felt comfortable that had enough knowledge to do that, to jump out and do that.
You're basically getting a paid education, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how old were you at this point?
So when I first went to work for him, I think I was 21, 20 or 21, so right in there. And then I left his employment when I was 24 years old. And then I worked for a year on my own doing stuff. And then I got my license at 25. Took my test, passed it the first time. And so that was both the test for trade and also test for business side. So I studied for that and passed it the first time. And then from there started, I didn't build my first house as a general contractor until a year later when I was 26. From 25 to 26, I did things like remodels. When I worked for that general contractor, I would also help him install cabinets in houses we were doing. And so I learned how to do that. So I actually connected up with a cabinet company out of Flagstaff and purchased cabinets from them and would sell cabinets to people that were either building houses or remodeling houses. Did that for about the first year. And then I got my first contract to build a house. And from there, things really started to take off for me.
So where you are now, so we're 40 years now into the future from where you started. Is that a typical path, like to be at 25 that you're a site foreman and you've been basically handed the keys and you're building a home for yourself? Like in today's workforce, is that common or would that be the exception to the rule?
I would say it really depends. I do have a young guy that's a project superintendent for me right now. He's probably in his late 50s, and he's now running jobs for me, building, coordinating the crews and organizing, building house. He's built now like 3 houses for me, and very sharp young man. That's his desire, was to be. He started out as a laborer for me, cleaning houses, doing our Energy Star work, and from there he climbed the ladder quickly. That's what he wanted to do. He was really focused on it. Reminded me a lot of me.
Yeah.
And so he's done really well, but you don't see that, especially today. I mean, today, unfortunately, the younger generation doesn't seem to want to really get involved in the construction. We're seeing more and more younger people. We have a vocational school here in Cottonwood that just basically started up a construction program about 3 years ago. We had a construction program back when I was in high school, a long time. They stopped having that class, and we saw that really impact our young kids coming out of high school. They didn't know exactly what they wanted to do. The construction ed class actually gave us opportunities to see what construction was about, and so we gained employees from that. But then once that class closed up, we didn't have very many students coming out of high school that wanted to be in the construction industry.
I wonder if they're just not exposed to it. It's got a bad rap to it. Like, I'm the tender age of 64. If I were to do it all over again, I would definitely go into the trades and, be an electrician, plumber. You've scared me away from that. But, I would definitely learn the ropes like you did. And eventually it would be me going off on my own and then hiring people underneath me so I can replicate that. But when you look at the potential in construction, like, you could be easily making 6 figures without any debt load, as opposed to coming out of university with a degree in lesbian dance theory and $1,000 in debt. And I think we've kind of almost by design created a whole generation of kids that are just frustrated, lonely, and they have no opportunity. They have no goal. Well, they have no goal because they don't know what to do, right? Versus, I think back in our day, because you and I aren't that far behind, we're kind of long in the truth, but still good looking. We had shop class and stuff like that, which would open up our minds to the possibilities of the different things, right? And I think that is sadly missed, and correct me if I'm wrong here, in the educational system. We need to be introducing kids to the trades. And I think it's just a matter of once they get to put their hands on something and actually go through the process, I think we'll see a lot more coming into the trades.
I absolutely agree with you on that. I will say when we went through the recession of 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, we lost over half of our workforce here in Arizona, and I'm sure other states did as well. And so by losing over half of our workforce, that during that period of time, Obama was in the office and was the president at the time, and he began to allow for funds to be used for retraining these people to some other kind of trade. Well, so the people that lost their jobs, they're now doing something different. And after experiencing what they experienced by not having a job, they probably decided, okay, I'm not going to do that again. So we've been struggling to gain back workers in the workforce to build houses since that period of time. And my close friend of mine thought that possibly the reason why the young kids aren't jumping into it is because mom or dad told them the experience he went through with losing his job and having to be retrained to do something different. So basically scared him away from that. So we went through a period of time where there was a lot of kids that didn't even want anything to do with construction. We're now with this new vocational school starting up that starting the construction ed class, we're beginning to see kids realize it's not a bad thing. And the other thing too is we're also letting them know, hey, wages are back up. In fact, way better than flipping burgers at McDonald's, and way, I mean, like I'm publishing a labor position, and this is a non-union job, $20 an hour start. And that's a really good wage for a young person coming out of high school.
Oh, young, unskilled, and eager to learn. $20 an hour. That's phenomenal. Like what's McDonald's? $5, $6, something like that. I don't even
know. No, we have had pressure on minimum wage increases. So it's around 12 to, I think it's going up again next year to around 13 or 14. But then it raises from that point.
Yeah, but that's a double-edged sword. I know we're kind of going off topic here a bit, Jim, but so these jobs are never designed to be full-time positions. They were meant for students, people that were getting in for their first time, perhaps seniors that just wanted to make a few bucks and get out of, the nursing home type thing. So it was never meant to be a full-time position that would launch you anywhere. It was, okay, I'm going to earn some money, right, for Christmas or whatever it is. And as they mandate the minimum wage and they keep pushing it up, it means, well, number one, the cost of those goods and services are going up, right? So now a burger costs, what's a Big Mac meal now, $12 or something ridiculous, right? And employers will now, instead of doing full time, they'll have an army of guys that are putting in fewer hours to make up for it, right? So yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. Either mandatory military, this is going to get me in a lot of trouble, mandatory military conscription that, from high school, you have to serve for 2 years, right? And I think that's going to make you fit. You're going to see the world. You're going to be introduced to a whole different array of skills that are out there. And then after your 2 years, if you continue or not, but now you're going to come back disciplined, in shape, and ready to go.
Yeah, be a man.
Yeah, and definitely, and looking at high school, I think the same thing should apply, that we need to bring shop and home ec, back into the system versus, I don't know what they're doing now, smoking outside or doing something, but, I digress here. It's easy to be an old fart and look back and say, this is the way it should be done, but anyway, let's get back to you. So when you finally went off on your own, are there any hard feelings, or your employer knows that eventually the bird is going to leave the nest, in this case you, that you've earned enough skills and now you're ready to do it on your own? Is that just something that's kind of accepted then?
I'm not sure he was real receptive to the fact that I was going out on my own. I mean, I believe, thought I was going to work for him for a long period of time. But I obviously was motivated, and he should have seen that by my desire to stay there, from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, and sometimes on weekends when the job required that. But I was very dedicated, very disciplined. He saw that, and I would have thought, I mean, that young guy that I'm telling you about that's in his late 20s, I had a sit down conversation with him. I said, I know that one day you're going to want to go out on your own. It's going to be, a big move for you. But, I told him, I said, I truly believe you have what it takes to be able to do that. It's a scary time when you jump out on your own, especially when you have a wife and he has a son. It is a scary time, but it is something I feel as owners of companies that it's our job to prepare the next generation for them to take on the role of owning the company.
So Jim, was that him having the conversation with you, or are you now in your head, this is the conversation you're going to have with this 20-something kid that you said you have on your team?
I already had that conversation with him. And
how'd that go?
I initiated that
Okay.
conversation.
Well, because from Ghost of Christmas Past that this is potentially what could happen. Okay.
I will say that through my years of management, owning this company or managing people prior to this, I realized that it's our job to try and raise people up and make them be better than they are, or help them be better than they are. And I think that's really a key to see in management is your management. Are they secure enough in themselves to bring people up and maybe even surpass them? Is that something because that's what we should do. We should try to make the people around us better and do our best to try and raise them up and bring them alongside you. I learned in management, they're my associates, so they're not my employees, and I think people take ownership when they're seen that way. And that's the way I feel everybody should feel that they have a big role in this company and they're just as important as the next guy. Or the next gal. I have both men and women working for me, and they all do a great job, and they all know that they're appreciated, and they all know that they're important, a very important part of this team.
You just did a little slip up there. I want to jump on that for a second. When you say gals, do you have any women in the workforce, like working for you, or do you see them in the trades in Arizona? So
we have women in the office. There's a few companies out there, as I mentioned to you the other day. I'm a management company, so we hire all subcontractors. We don't self-perform any of the work to build a house. I learned a long time ago, it's just much better, more efficient, better for the employees if I'm not trying to find something for them to do to fill in between the work that they actually are trained to do. And so I hire all subcontractors. I have a few subcontractors that have women that work for them on our job sites, which is great. It's good to see that, but not very many. Mostly the construction industry is made up of male workers.
So when we talk about the trade, so how long did it take you to learn this concept? I guess, for lack of a better word, you're delegating, because instead of you trying to do everything, when you mentioned you've got employees and you have to keep them busy. And we know that, there's good times and bad times. And there's also, you're on a job site waiting for suppliers and things happen. By, default, there's delays. And if you can't keep your kids amused, right, eventually they're going to take their tools and go play somewhere else, which means you're starting all over again. How long did it take you to learn that lesson, that it's easier to be, in your case, like the contractor, and then you sub out?
So when I first started, I did self-perform. I had a crew. We did work. We tried to do as many tasks as we could in the process of building a house. But it's hard to take a framer and have them be a trim carpenter. Yeah. That's really difficult because they don't know the tolerances are different from one to the other. You can find those people, but it's rare. It's hard to find. And also those people that can go from that to trim carpentry, they don't want to do concrete work because concrete work is hard work. It's grueling. I hated the days when a ready-mix truck pulled up onto the job site and we're having to pour it out and then finish it, because concrete hardens, the finish quite right. It hardens whether you have it right or not, so it's really important that you have your concrete, everything together at one time, have enough people, have experienced finishers. And so it's hard. It's hard to have experienced finishers that can also do framing or trim carpentry. That's just hard to find those kind of people. I mean, I did that. I poured footings, laid block, poured concrete floors, finished concrete floors, framed houses, trimmed outhouses. I did all those things, even plumbing, as much as I hated doing that. But what I really realized is it's not easy to find people that can do all of that. The old saying, you're a master of all trades, or you're
master of none. Yeah, jack of all trades, master
jack of all trades, master of
none. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think you said it there. There's two things at play here. Number one, I've got a friend here, Wolf is his name. He's probably in his late 60s. He's a mutter, drywaller. And he's a monster of a man. He's like 6'5". Yeah, he looks like the village blacksmith, not that we have them around anymore, but you kind of get my drift here. You give that guy a trowel and mud, and he's like a ballerina. He like, get out of his way. He gets the job done. It's amazing to see this big, clumsy ox. But as I said, when you give him a trowel or a sheet of drywall, it's like watching a choreographed ballet. Now, if I were to say, hey, go frame a house or, put shingles up or something like that, could he do it? Yeah, absolutely. But he wouldn't be able to do it with the same speed and precision that he does with mudding and drywall, because that's what he does day in and day out. So I think from your perspective, as you're building your company, you need to know all those things, because with a keen eye, you can tell if the blocks have been put down properly. You can tell if the trades that you've hired are doing the job the way they're supposed to. And I think the analogy, and we used this, I think, once before, is when you've got good people around you, you're the rock star, right? So you've got the guitar, the microphone's up front of you. You're basically Mick Jagger, and these guys are your band to make you sound even better than you are. Is that a fair analogy?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. And I'm not asking you to sing or play guitar, but I think that's...
Please
so
don't.
let's segue from that. All right. So let's jump into where you are now. So you worked for a builder. You did your first high-end home, and then you've done subdivisions, right? So predominantly, what is the Lawler construction business doing now? Is it high-end homes? Is it subdivision, entry level? What is it that you do right now?
So it's interesting because some people look at a builder that does subdivision homes and they think that that builder can't do high-end homes, which is totally incorrect. I built high-end homes since I was in my early 20s all the way to now. And so that's something that I cut my teeth on. That's what I did day in and day out. And so I didn't get into subdivision building until 2012. In 2012, a owner of a subdivision, an investor, had to foreclose on the builder that he had building homes in that subdivision. And so he interviewed 5 builders. He settled on me. I was the only one to actually put together a business plan. And I will tell you, the business plan is really a wise thing for a business to do, a company to do. It's understand what a business plan is and actually put one together, because it is a document that gives you a roadmap of how you want to run your company. And that's really a great tool. And so I put together a business plan, took over the subdivision. Within 6 months, I took over another subdivision that he had in Lake Havasu City. So in the first subdivision I took over, I built 127 homes in there, and they're all semi-custom homes. There were not one of those houses was a tract style house. It was all semi-custom. The people got to make selections. They got to decide on what finishes. They had all different kinds of, we didn't have a set, like a lot of cases, builders will give you 5 choices, and those 5 choices give you all the color selection, the style, the faucets, the appliances, cabinetry, all of that, and you stick with that. You can't change for that. Or you can maybe modify it slightly, but to make the builder's life easier, he doesn't allow you to have changes because he can manage prices better that way. When you're making a lot of people make changes, make selections, that takes more time to get the pricing together for that. Most builders don't want that. What they want is in fact, most builders are no builders. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. And that's what is different from our company, is that we're yes builders. We say, yes, we could do that. Yeah, sure, we could do that. And people like that. And that's what attracted people to our subdivision, is that, they would go to the other subdivisions. They were like, when they said we couldn't do that, they said we could do that. And when we came to your subdivision, you said, yes, I could do that. I could do that. And they loved it. And so that's how we took off the way we did. And again, we're semi-custom when it comes to our subdivisions. And Lake Havasu City was even more customized because we built houses there with RV garages attached to them. And in fact, I took those plans from Lake Havasu City and brought them back here to Cottonwood and started building in another section of our subdivision those style homes. Well, since then, we finished that phase, and the owner of that subdivision decided he's nearing 80 years old, and he decided he didn't want to do this anymore. And so he said, okay, I'm going to give you the first right to buy it, and you could go with it. And so once I did all the research to find out exactly what it was going to cost me up front to get started, it was going to be around $4 million. And I did not have $4 million sitting in the bank. So fortunately for me, another subdivision had gone bankrupt, and investors bought that in the early 2010, they bought that. They were struggling with other builders that they were trying to get in there to do work. And they approached us and offered us 100 of their lots to build on. And so the lots were ready to build on, ready to go. So I said, I'm wrapping this one up. That's perfect. I'll wrap this one up and I'll get started over there. That owner of the first subdivision owned the plans that I was using to build houses there. And we came really close with each other. And I said, so, you've sold this out to another builder. You don't need these plans. Is it okay if I take these plans over to this subdivision and use it there? I said, absolutely. So that was nice because I had built-in plans already ready to go into another subdivision and start building houses. So that's the subdivision side.
Let me just jump in there for a sec on the subdivision side then. You're dealing with a builder that went bankrupt. How do you then fund a project like that? Like you said, you don't have $4 million in your right pocket. It was probably in the trunk of your car. But is financing a build like that difficult to do? And then the second question would be, when you've partnered up with, in particular, these guys, they've got the land, how do you get paid moving forward? Are you relying on them? Is there a draw? How does that work?
So that's good. Great questions. So these investors in the first subdivision I took over, they owned the property and foreclosed on the builder. Builder had no skin in the game. I've never seen a lender allow somebody to not have any equity at all into the subdivision. So he built 20 homes in there, and then he went bankrupt. And so when he filed bankruptcy and they foreclosed on him, they basically took everything, the land and everything, and put it back in their name. And so the deal I made with them was that they would finance the building, and they would also then own the land, and they would then they would sell, they would transfer the land to my clients that I sold to at the time that we closed on the loan, on the purchase of the home, on the construction. And so they financed the construction. They also carried the paper on the land. I had nobody in it. And it was good. They realized in 2012, they were just happy to have a builder that could do this, take over and do this, because a lot of
Well,
builders
they were
had
happy to
gone.
have a competent builder that they knew that could complete the job.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
true. There was a lot of builders that had gone bankrupt, in that recession. And so there was a lot of builders that were gone. And so they said, you know what, we'll do all the financing. We'll be responsible for all the money. We just bring in your expertise to the table of building houses and also putting together the deal, and that's as far as for me, I actually chose what plans we would build for a spec house, how it'd be finished, all of that. They allowed me to just take over and do all that. And so that was really nice because I was basically in control of that. There wasn't somebody from Missouri, which is where they're from, telling me what kind of houses to build and how to finish them. They knew that I knew the area. I knew what people were looking for. And so they knew that they could trust
Well,
me.
you even said you had a design. Like, who would know this? That one of the designs that you're building was a main floor house, everything on one floor, because these are probably snowbirds, right? And instead of just having a garage or double garage, it's a triple garage because you had one for their big honk and RVs. Like that is not something that intuitively a builder would even think of doing, I don't think. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any of that up here.
And I actually, as I mentioned, I went to Lake Havasu City within 6 months of taking over this subdivision here at Cottonwood. And Lake Havasu City is a snowbird. People like you go to that community all winter long. They would start coming in around November, stay there until end of May, 1st of May, somewhere in there. So during that period of time that they're there, they bring all their toys down, or they buy their toys and store in those garages. And they would also bring their diesel pushers down from Canada, from the Northwest, and then park them in their RV garage and live in the house. And, that became a very popular thing there in Lake Havasu City. In fact, remodels were happening with people adding RV garages to the side of their houses because they realized the value that those RV garages brought. Lake Havasu City doubles in population during the wintertime. It's huge.
I just want to jump in on something you said. People like me, quote unquote, people like me know people like you. And then we come and stay with people like you. So people like me don't have to buy houses. So watch what you wish for, man. That's how that part works.
So you don't have a big RV that you could drive down here, huh?
No. A golf cart, maybe. That's about the size of that thing. So let's go back a step. So that was subdivisions, and you've done high-end homes as well. So, you've got everything kind of in between. But you've also gone through recessions. How many of those did you weather?
So I believe there's been 4 recessions that I've been through since I started in business. And if you remember, in 1987, went bankrupt. And so the government opened up what's called the Resolution Trust Corp. And the Resolution Trust Corp ended up acquiring all of the foreclosed properties that these S&Ls held. And we thought, actually, when we went through this last recession, that might happen again, but it didn't happen. And the government just let the banks and themselves deal with all of this massive amount of assets that got sent back to the banks. I mean, it turned into a nasty thing in 2009, 10, 11, 12. So, but in 1987 was the first one. I think there was one in 93, and then there was the one in 2000. Recession. And actually that was kind of also 2001 when we went through 9/11. We had a slight recession then, but 2008, 9, 10. I mean, the deepest part of the recession in 2000, the end of 2000, was 9 and 10. 9, with the end of 8 is when Bush said that banks are about ready to go bankrupt. We're going to have to prop them up. And then they started propping up, GM, Chrysler, you know, so those companies and the banks had to be propped up in the end of 2008. I think that's basically what's sunk any opportunity for the Republican to be elected in office, because it was under Bush's watch that this happened. Yeah, and so unfortunately, that happened to our industry, which was the deepest cutting recession ever in the real estate industry. So if you remember in 1981, when Reagan took office, interest rates jumped to like 18, 19%. And that was considered a real estate recession. And a lot of people thought that this recession in 2008, 9, and 10 was going to be similar to that. Well, it was way deeper than the 1981 recession.
Did it
as
ever get
everybody
to a
else
point,
knew.
like during these recessions, was there any one in particular, but did it get to the point when you said to your wife, Cindy, honey, pack a lunchbox, we're out of here, we're done? Like, did it ever get to that point where your back was up at the wall and you're not sleeping nights? It's like, why did I do this? I could be flipping burgers. But did it ever come to that point?
Well, it definitely, I will tell you, this last recession was so deep and so tough in our industry that, yes, I thought it was going to come to, Lawler Construction was going to come to an end. And I believe I mentioned to you a couple days ago that, in the early 2000s, I dedicated Lawler Construction to God, and so my faith was that, okay, God, if this is your company, if you want it to go, I'm okay. I'm ready to let it go. And it didn't happen. And from
Okay,
that
hold
point,
on. Time out there for a second. Okay, I know from the Gospels that Jesus was a carpenter. I totally get that. But I don't think you rang the phone and said, I need building advice. So what was it that prompted that decision?
to dedicate it to God, or to
Yeah. I want to unpack that more.
so back in that period of time, I had a much closer relationship with God. I still do. I mean, very, very much do. And that's, I learned that it's what we have is not ours. We just steward what we have. And that's what I realized with Lawler Construction. I was just a steward for God in Lawler Construction. So I made a commitment that it would be, God's company. And so, everything my wife and I do is we pray about it and we ask God to give us the direction in it. And I will say, I have seen some amazing things since that period of time. Amazing things.
Give us an example, Jim.
So I just have a high school diploma. I have some college credits, and I'm running a $10 million company. That is not something that uneducated, I'm educated to the point of high school, but I'm not educated in college to get a college degree. Both of my sons are educated, because I told them early on, you're going to get a college education, because I didn't. And I made sure that they knew they were going to get one. But, I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate. I have to say that I have dodged a whole lot of trials and errors. And I still have my share of them. Don't get me wrong. But it's amazing the growth that this company has had since actually the recession, taking over that subdivision and taking over the subdivision like Havasu City. What happened for me in that was we became purchasers of volume, and volume, when you buy in large volume, that gives you much better pricing. And so I was able to pass that on to both my subdivision buyers and also my luxury home buyers and my custom home buyers, everything in between.
So you're making your prices and were much more competitive then, I take it.
Much better. Yeah.
Let me just go back a step. There's something you said there, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. You've got a high school degree and you've got, a couple credits. My neighbor across the street, he's a retired farmer. and he's got to be pushing north of 80 right now. And if I were to give him a roll of duct tape and a screwdriver, I would put him up against Elon Musk, because he doesn't have the brain smarts, but he knows he's got the technical smarts. So there's a difference between knowledge, knowing something, but where you come into the mix, there's wisdom. So I know that I shouldn't put my hand on a hot appliance. I know that because I didn't touch it. It's because the wisdom tells me that if I touch it, I'm going to get burned. So when I encounter somebody like you, I don't care about high school or whatever it is. You've accumulated this vast sum of knowledge, the practical stuff that we've talked about. You know this is plumb. You know this was done properly. But you've got the wisdom to apply that all to actually build this empire that you can look back at and be proud of.
I appreciate that, Michael. And yes, I would say that the 40 years of owning my own company has given me the opportunity to learn a lot of things, gain a lot of wisdom, gain a lot of knowledge. And I will say this, and hopefully for your viewers that are younger, I could have fast tracked.
Jim, everybody's younger than us. Get that through. They're all younger than us. Yeah.
So I could have fast tracked my path to having this wisdom and knowledge if I would have opened myself up to other elderly builders and just said, hey, what is the success? What have you done that you feel is your things that you did the best and you would attribute to, your success in your company? I didn't do that. I would learn it on my own, and so I, through the hard knocks of life, I learned. But fortunately I have a great team. I also, my youngest son is my vice president of my company. Once a week, he and I have breakfast. We talk about, things, not only construction work, but also, spiritual things. And so I'm passing on that legacy to him and hopefully fast tracking it for him so that when he eventually takes over this company one day, it will be easier for him than it was for me. It is already. He's already a developer. He's this new subdivision we took over. He's actually the developer of that. So Lawler Construction still builds the houses, but he's the one that sells the houses. I was the one that built the houses in the first subdivision, but I had a different company that sold the houses. And so he's learned to do that. And I mean, that's a big step for him, a big jump for him.
Must make you proud that there's going to be a legacy to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about that.
Well, Jim, I never asked, what's your son's name?
It's Patrick.
Okay, so I'll have to I'm writing that down because that seems like a future interview. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, he'd be a great interview. I also have an older son who did work for me for a short period of time, but he worked out for me up to the recession. But he's actually a graduate of Colorado School of Mines, which is an engineering school. Mm-hmm. He's a registered structural engineer now, or registered civil engineer, excuse me. And he's actually vice president of one of the largest bridge building companies in North America now. And actually, they also do structures and so forth, but their main, his part is bridges and highways to the bridges.
Nice.
Excuse me. And so both of my sons got into the construction industry, but in the administrative side of the construction industry because I sent them to college. So they got a fast track on, business management, and also in the math classes that they learned to do spreadsheets and all kinds of things with these computers, which is today, if you're not using a computer for part of business applications, you're way behind on what everybody else is doing.
Well, that's kind of a good segue to my next question. Like where you are now, looking back, what would you say are some of the biggest changes that have happened in the industry since you started to where you are now?
So my first mobile telephone was a brick phone. Actually, I think it was a bag phone. And so that was my first mobile phone. Actually, very first communication was a radio. And we had some radio antennas around the area. So
Didn't you go back
Yeah.
to smoke and blankets? I thought for sure you were in the day. Okay, maybe
Real
I'm
close to
thinking of
that.
another builder. Okay, from Arizona.
That would be the one from the reservation.
Okay.
Anyway, so anyway, so that's where I started. When I got my first, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of what.
Motorola would have been the big one back then.
Well, my first computer was
okay.
a TRS-80. They
Okay.
called it a Trash 80. It had basic language, and that was it. It was basically worthless for anything. Anything. I mean, I learned how to write a program that would sort names. Big deal. And I soon learned that once I bought that computer, it was already outdated.
Yeah.
Because the next one was coming out. And then the next one was coming out. The next one, so seeing the technology advance the way it did, from the time I started to now is amazing. I mean, in fact, we're now talking about AI stuff, and it's kind of scary, but it also is quite amazing what AI can do. I mean, it is something that is the future, and how we train it, how we use it is the key to how well that's going to work in our industry. I mean, we can't build houses with AI because we still need, people actually swinging the hammer, or not swinging the hammers. They all use pneumatic tools, but, we still need the people putting the houses together. There is, though, the technology of printer, and printer houses or printer machines actually building houses. And that's happening in Texas right now. And at some point in time, that's going to be the future, but I don't see it as something that's going to happen anytime soon. Especially when we talk about houses, the luxury houses, if you visit my website, you'll see a photo gallery of houses that are really some very, very nice homes. You can't build those homes with a 3D printer. That's just not going to happen. Now, it might happen at some point in time, someday, but that's going to be I'm going to be long gone by the time that happens, I believe. Yeah. Although with the advancement of technology and how fast it's gone, it's amazing how technology's changed. Which leads me into, your question of what's changed from then to now, and the efficiency of our homes, the energy efficiency and how well they're built has definitely changed for me. It's really important to me to stay up with the latest technology and cutting edge of what is efficient and what's a cost-effective thing to use. There's definitely those houses out there that, you can go crazy and it's like an igloo, but you've spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars more for that over a conventional house. And conventional houses can still be very efficient and very healthy. You don't need to go to the crazy stuff of the latest and greatest exterior wall or something like that. Although I do have a client that we're getting ready to build a couple houses for, that he's hypoallergenic, very sensitive. And so we're going to be building a house that's got ICF block for the exterior walls, steel framing, cementitious sheeting, so that none of the products are wood, will bring on mold or mildew. There won't be any gypsum products in the house, no particle board, none of that. It's either all solid wood, sealed, or steel, or plastics. So everything's going to be mold resistant, mildew resistant. So it should be a very nice house. That's my first. And actually, talking to the guy that does the ICF, he said that would be his first. And he's been in the industry for a long time. So that's the farthest I've ever gone in that direction. But I am an Energy Star certified builder and Indoor Air Plus, which is a builder that I have to meet certain criteria to be certified. I cannot certify my own homes. I need to hire a third party to certify our homes. And then those homes are recorded at the EPA as a Energy Star certified home, Indoor Air Plus. So people can actually take that booklet and say, this is how efficient my home is. And and use it for resale.
Here's one. I want you to go back to that point where you're just about to break out from being a single door builder. You're at that verge. You're at that point where you're going to expand. You're at that expansion point. What would you recommend to a builder that's listening right now, who's at that same point where he's at that point where he's not building one or two homes at a time? He may be getting ready to tackle that first subdivision. However, the gods have lined it up in such a way that, like in your case, there's a developer that went bankrupt, the lots are available, he's going to be partnering with somebody. What would be that advice to that builder that's getting ready to make that next leap, if you will?
Well, first of all, you need people. And as we talked about, I learned a long time ago, surround myself with good people and great things will happen. And so this was always scary for my wife. She said, you got to hire another person. We don't even have that job, and it's like, well, I have to have those people in order to get those jobs, and so that would be the thing I would say, is that you need to begin to find those people that you can surround yourself with. The other thing that I learned, and this is really important, and that is I need to identify my weaknesses. So I hire my weaknesses, the strengths that I don't have. I need to surround myself with those strengths so that we're a well-rounded team.
You're a wise man. You're taking the ego out of the equation. So I think I shared with you in my early days of real estate, I met a developer, an Italian gentleman, and could barely speak English. He did not know how to write, but he was a multimillionaire. And I remember through the translation, my broker was his cousin of all things. And he looked and he said, Mike, it's not important to me to know all the answers, but I have to know the people that do. So at a moment's notice, he could pick up the phone, and if he needs an answer to a question, he knows exactly who to talk to. So just like in your case, surround you. So you have to take the ego out of the equation because you can't possibly know everything. It's just like what we talked about right at the beginning. Could you do everything? Could you be the bricklayer? Could you do the framing? Could you do the stuck? Yeah, you could. Could you do it well? Could you do it quickly? Can you do it on time? Can you do it cost effectively? You need to know so that I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is to take the ego out of the equation. And as you said, realize what your strengths are. That's what you focus on. And then you fill in the gaps with good people. And everybody rises up in that case. I think everybody rises. It's like that phrase, all boats rise and fall with the tide. When you bring in good people, that tide goes up, I think.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Right. I learned that early. So that was the thing for me, for my growth, was to bring good people in around me. It was really good.
I'm just gonna throw some quick questions at you. I don't want you to think about them. First thing that pops in your mind. It's not even going to be building related. Your favorite book?
It'd be. That's a good question. Love and Respect is a good book. It's a marriage book. Helped my wife and I with our marriage, and it's a great book.
How many years has that been, Jim?
So I first read that book probably 10 years ago. Right.
No, I meant how long have you been married? Because your anniversary was just recently.
Yeah, it just was. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, 48 years.
So that must have been a good book.
Well, we didn't get it when we first got married. We probably could have used it when we first got married, but yeah, my wife and I got married young. My oldest son is 47, and we just celebrated our 48th wedding anniversary, and my oldest son will be turning 48 in July.
Wow. So, congratulations, man. Congratulations. Favorite movie?
I would have to say that my favorite movie would be, that's a good one. I like Top Gun. That was a good show.
The old one or the new one?
Probably the old one, because that was the first one that came out that had all the interesting stuff. But the new one's pretty good too. So not too bad.
Okay. Last question. Living or dead, you're sitting on a park bench, you're watching a glorious sunrise over Sedona. Who would that person be beside you, and what would you be talking about?
It'd be my wife, and we would just be talking about all the great things that we've been able to experience in our lives. I mean, it's just, if I ended my life ended today, I'd have to say that I just can't believe how much I've experienced and the great people I've met, the great places we've gone, but also this community, this location. There's nothing like the Verde Valley, Cottonwood Verde Valley, and Sedona area. Sedona's crazy. It's got its tourist attraction thing, so it's a little bit wild. But this community here is actually the lifeblood of Sedona. We provide Sedona with all the workforce. We also supply Sedona with shopping. So it's a great community, and this community is really a great community. We're very fortunate to live here. Every time my wife and I come home from our vacation, we're like, well, we're really glad we live here.
I think like we talked about earlier, we people have to come down and visit you people.
You should. Yeah. I'd welcome you.
Jim, I want to thank you for taking time out. Any parting words, anything you want to leave with our potential builders, contractors, trades that are listening in?
I will say this. The most important thing that you do is, you're on time, you're on budget, and you're honest with everything you do. Don't ever hold anything back, even if it's going to hurt you, it's going to cost you some money. In the long run, one, you'll be able to sleep at night, and two, you'll know that you did the right thing. And that's really important, I think, in owning a business.
Mr. Jim Lawler of Lawler Construction from Arizona, Cottonwood to be exact. Thank you, my friend, for taking time out today.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.